Hello, Flo.
Hi, Lucas.
Hi. So it's good to speak to you. So you've been recommended to me by our mutual friend Chan Park,
Uh-huh.
and yes, he thought you would be a very interesting person for this interview series, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing your stories because you've been in tango for very long, and you're a very popular dancer and very well known in North America. Um, so um, uh, yeah. So first of all, I would like to ask you, for the people who don't know you, can you give us a short summary of who you are, like your
Yeah.
trajectory?
My name is Flo Woodruff, and I live in California in Orange County. Been here for years and years. I'm married. I have been dancing for Argentine tango for 30 years, and mother, grandmother, just just me.
Yes, and you have experience in the U.S. and at Encuentros in Buenos Aires.
Yes, yes, yes. I've done many of those things. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And many memories, many memories,
Yes.
much learning.
Yes, and many friends and people who know you. So
Yes, yes, I met so many people from around the world in Buenos Aires. And there's something about people that you meet in Buenos Aires. You become kind of a family. The the best times to go to Buenos Aires are in their spring and then their fall. The seasons are reversed. And so the best times to go are in March and April and October, November. And to those of us who are addicted to Argentine tango, many of us show up at those times every year. And so you get to see the same people, and I've danced with and met people from all over the world, Netherlands and UK and France and Italy and just all over the place. And we often maintain touch.
um, so you've already told us a bit about Buenos Aires, about meeting people from everywhere, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that later. But can you
Yeah.
first tell me a bit about your origins in tango, how it all started?
Oh, well, um, when I was growing up, everybody danced, sort of a ballroom kind of a thing. And I had when I was 15, I had a boyfriend who was 16 and a fabulous dancer. And we would go to the Pasadena Civic Auditorium to dance. And our song was Blue Tango. And we would tango in this great big venue and clear the floor so people could watch. I have no idea what kind of tango it was. Um, I just followed him, and I think that was the seed. I think that was the seed that was planted when I was 15. And uh, years later, I was taking a tap class. I've always done some kind of dancing, and there was a bulletin on the board in the dance room that said there was a master class in Argentine tango coming. And my husband and I had gone to see the show Tango Argentina in the mid to late 80s. And we were sitting very close, and I know that Eduardo Archenbaugh winked at me. I know he did. And I said to my husband, someday I'm going to do that. And so when I saw this bulletin, I thought, aha, this is my chance. And so I came home and told my husband, and he said, oh, I'll go with you. which really surprised me because he's not a dancer. And so anyway, that was how it started. We went to this master class and we learned the 5-step basic and an ocho, and boy, oh boy, we were ready to dance Argentine tango. So that was in 1993. And that's how we got started, how I got started. So I feel like tango found me. I think there was a seed waiting, and tango found me. I was supposed to do it.
So, how was the scene like at that time?
There were no teachers around to speak of in LA. I live about 45, 50 miles south of LA. There were no teachers here. We ran into a couple who danced tango, and they had been to Buenos Aires and danced with, studied with the Denzels, and they said that they would teach us. And so for 2 years, every Wednesday, we went to their home and danced in their garage. Now, this was a garage like none you've ever seen, wooden floor and beautifully done. So it was really their studio. And so that's what we did for 2 years. There were no milongas around in our area. There were some in LA, but we were so intimidated. We felt like country mice. We were so intimidated that it took a long time before we had courage to go up to an LA milonga, and only with our teachers going with us. So the scene was very, very sparse. We ran into a few people who were doing it, but there just weren't very many around. And then Orlando Paiva came to teach, and so we took lessons from him, and then that started to pull some other people in to classes. So we met more people there, and the tango scene here started to expand a bit. And there were a few sort of local milongas that started up. I mean, maybe there would be 20 people, if that. And so it just kind of started to spread a little bit. There was a Sunday night milonga that everybody came to. People came down from LA. People came from San Diego. I mean, you just didn't miss Caesars on Sunday night. And so that way, the tango scene started to expand, and you got to know more people. And it was less frightening to go to LA to some of the milongas. And also there were teachers who were being brought in. So we had more opportunity to learn and to practice.
Yes,
Yeah.
is that also how you went to other areas because it became more connected?
Well, that didn't happen immediately. I guess it was about 2 years after we started. There was a tour that was set up for Buenos Aires for 10 days by Linda Valentino. And so it was very, very inexpensive. And so we decided to go. And the people who had been teaching us also, and there were probably maybe 15 in the group. And so we went to Buenos Aires, and Linda had set up tours for us to take, cultural kinds of things, and also some lessons. We had lessons with Alicia and Carlos Capel, and we went to some of the local milongas. Well, that was kind of a bust in a way, because in Buenos Aires, if things may have changed a little now, but if you are seated with a man, and obviously a couple, the locals will not come and ask you to dance. That's just part of their tradition. And so because I was with Woody, nobody would ask me to dance. And he didn't want to dance. He was terrified and intimidated by dancers on the floor. And we hadn't had much practice with floor craft, that kind of thing. So I just sort of sat much more than I would have liked to, but we had a good time. We loved Buenos Aires. And so the next year we decided to do it again, and we did. And it was pretty much the same. Had a great time, ate lots of beefy chorizo and dulce de leche and flan and all the wonderful things that Buenos Aires has to offer. So the third year, he didn't want to go. And so I went with the girls. And so that sort of started things for me, really, in Buenos Aires, my experience, because I was with gals, and so I danced a lot. And I learned a lot. La Escuela de los Milongueros. So yeah, it was wonderful, and that just started the whole Buenos Aires journey. And it really has been a journey. I think about it, and the things that I have learned, not only about the people there, but how it's enriched my life, made me stronger as a woman. I had never flown by myself alone. I had never taken a trip by myself alone. I was always with my husband. When I started renting an apartment, I went several times with girlfriends. And then I met a woman who was from San Francisco, and we decided we would go down together. So we did that for several years. And then I decided that I wanted to try it on my own and see how that. My friend was fluent in Spanish, and I have had very, very little. I still have very little, but I never had a chance to order my own food or talk to the taxi cab drivers. I mean, why would they want to talk to me when they had a fluent Spanish speaker in the car? So I decided it was a good time to do it myself. And that was when I got an apartment. And that was the first time I had ever lived alone. I went from my mother's house to a sorority house for a short period of time, and then back to my mother's house, and then Woody and I were married. So I guess from that standpoint, I was pretty sheltered. So just being out there on my own, carrying my own ticket and my own passport and managing the luggage, and that was a huge step for me. And I talked to people who would talk to. I talked to a woman once on an airplane and told her the story. Well, she was almost horrified. Here you are. Where are you going by yourself? Well, I'm going to Buenos Aires to dance tango. Well, by yourself, but it was empowering, and I found that there were a lot of people who met women who were maybe just a little bit jealous that I was going to be doing that on my own. So that was such a good thing for me, such an empowering kind of thing to be on my own. Yeah.
So is there a reason why you didn't go with your husband? So was he not interested anymore in going to Buenos Aires or?
Yeah, he really wasn't interested in tango anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, he's not really really a
He
dancer.
stopped dancing, so
He stopped dancing
okay.
probably about maybe 4 or 5 years after we started. Prior to that, we would go to milongas in LA, and Woody always drove. We had a van, and so we'd load up the van with people and go up to LA. And he didn't want to dance a lot, and I did, and so he would sit there, and I'd be dancing around, and he got bored, and finally, I worried that he was not having a good time, and it just kind of evolved. It seemed like it would be better for both of us if he stopped dancing.
But
He's always been very accepting of me. We've always been partners, and so he said, do your own thing, do your own thing.
that's great. That's great.
Yeah, yeah.
So were you able to go to Los Angeles, for example? Were you able to go alone from that point?
uh yeah, at times I did. It's people are so provincial now. People from LA don't want to come down way to Orange County, and people from Orange County don't want to go way up to LA. Of course, the traffic is hideous.
Hmm.
And I think about all of the years that I drove by myself, 3 or 4 nights a week to milongas in LA, and really thought nothing about it. I mean, that's if I wanted to dance. That's at that point there still weren't very many milongas in Orange County, and so if you wanted to dance, that's what you did. And
Yeah.
sometimes you had a companion to go with you, and sometimes you didn't. But if you didn't, you just went anyway.
So this is one of the changes you've seen over the years that tango has grown, and now there's less interest in traveling to a nearby place or relatively nearby because it's
Yeah.
not as much of a necessity as it was back then.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And there are more milongas in our area. There are a lot more milongas in the LA area, and different. The milongas have stopped for various reasons. There are others that have grown up. The pandemic made a huge difference. There are some people who have not come back to tango, and they probably won't. They, for illness reasons, or just getting used to being at home,
Yes.
not wanting to. I'm sure that that's the same way all over the world. You get comfortable, you snuggie up at home, and it's easier sometimes to sit there.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I've heard that people in general, not tango people, but people in general, seem to be visiting other people less because they've just gotten used to a different lifestyle. And
Mhm.
yeah, but it's an interesting point. I'm not sure how that actually works with milongas at the moment, but I do know that schools are having a hard time because the hardcore dancers will always return to schools, but there's also a wider audience of dancers who just do it as a hobby. They don't even go to milongas, and those are the people who seem to have disappeared from the schools, and that's a financial problem for teachers.
Mhm.
But so let's just hope it grows back. But it's not a very chronological thing to ask right now. But where nowadays, so you go to Encuentros, but I suppose you also still dance in your region. So do you go to LA or do you go to Orange Country or do you go to other areas?
Um, at this point, I'm not driving freeways anymore, and boy, oh boy, that is really confining, not to be able to do it yourself, to depend on other people. And as I say, a lot of people down here don't want to drive way into LA, and the traffic really is something to deal with. And of course, the price of gas and the cost of the milongas have gone up. And so it's much more expensive. And so I go locally. There's a studio in Avant-Garde in Santa Ana, and they have milongas every Friday night. There's a milonga there, and then about 3 Sundays during the afternoon a month. And there's one which is in San Pedro, which is not very far. Lovely milonga. And so those are the ones to which I go, unless once in a great while I'll go to LA if there's somebody, a friend of mine, who wants to go up there. Yeah, and I would like to be able to do it more, because there are people that I met years ago that I don't have a chance to see very often, because they don't come down here and we don't go up there. So that's a kind of a shame.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I also find that there's, at least here, there's more of a separation in the tango world. Years ago, there was a milonga in LA on a Friday night. It was run by a man named Mark Celaya, who is no longer with us, and his partner, Joan Yovitz. And Friday night, you just went to Mark's milonga. We would take a van of people up there. And everybody was sort of together. It was in a realtor's hall in Burbank. And there were these groups, but we were together. In the corner, you'd have the kids from Caltech, and that included Homer Lottis, and they would be in one corner, and then you'd have a sort of a ballroom kind of people in another corner, and you'd have the Argentines over on the other side, and then the Orange County people were sort of down here. And there was one woman who was always drunk, who just kind of wandered back and forth, talking to everybody and laughing to everybody. Mark brought in wonderful teachers for free. So before the milonga, there would be a class, and well-known people. There was no cost for that. That was just part of the milonga. And it's just where you went. It's just where you went, and people danced around. They danced with each other. So there wasn't. I mean, there were separate groups seated, but you didn't have the feeling that there was this huge separation in the community. And there's much more of that now.
Oh.
The LA crowd is much younger. And some of them do what a friend of mine calls light tango, kind of flitting around the room, etc. And there are others of us who are older who do a deeper kind of tango. We're not interested in tricks. And there can be this age barrier anyway. Men are more inclined to dance with the very young girls, no matter how they dance, or if they really can't dance, than to dance with older women. That's just the reality, and something that you have to deal with. So I've been around long enough, and I've had enough experience, and I've danced enough with a lot of different people, so that doesn't always happen with me, fortunately. But it's kind of a shame. But that's the way it is. That's the way it's always been, and maybe it always will be.
So if I understand correctly, that if you go back in time, not everything has become better. by tango maturing, by tango being there for a longer time. Like it seems like some things may have also been better in the past because there was maybe my version of what you're trying to say, but I feel like back then there were less options, so maybe people would treasure them more, like they were.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So you told me, so going back to the subject of Buenos Aires, because we've talked a bit about your local scene, because I asked you about it, but before that we were talking about Buenos Aires and that your husband stopped dancing and that you went on your first with a group and then ultimately you went on your own and you did you say you actually bought a place there or did you rent a place?
Oh, I rented an apartment.
Okay.
The first time I went down by myself, I didn't have any place to stay. Well, I was staying in a hotel temporarily, and a friend of mine had given me a contact, a reference, and so I found an apartment, and I was there twice a year for about 8 years. So, and at that point in time, my length of stay in Buenos Aires had increased to about 6 weeks. I started out going for 10 days and 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks and a month, and so I was going for 6 weeks twice a year, and for that period of time, 7 or 8 years, I was in the same apartment. So it really was like going home, my other home. Yeah. And it came to feel like Buenos Aires was my other home. Going down, we talked about the seasonal thing. And there are many people who go the same times, year after year. And so you see these same people, and often the relationships that you have change by having been in Buenos Aires together. They deepen because after all, you aren't in a foreign country. You may not know the language. And so there's this feeling of, I think, sticking together, maybe being there for each other, besides having a chance to see each other more often because you're dancing every day. There's so many experiences where the people that I knew have helped me so much. I broke my ankle one time in Buenos Aires. I stepped in a hole
Hmm.
out of a milonga at night. All these holes in the sidewalks, and I broke my ankle. And three of my friends sort of moved in with me for a week. I couldn't do much of anything, and so my girlfriend came every day and cooked meals and cleaned house much better than I would have. And then I had two tango boyfriends, and so one of them went out and got me a boot for my ankle and changed my flight. He happened to be Spanish speaking, and they took turns spending the night with me, so that if I had to go to the bathroom or whatever, I wouldn't be alone. And so that went on for a week until I was able to leave. There was no point in sticking around because I couldn't dance. And so there was that kind of thing that went on. Another time I cracked my sacrum, and boy, that's a painful thing. And two of my girlfriends were very close, and I couldn't do anything. Just going from the bed to standing up was excruciating. Standing up to sitting down was worse. And so these two girlfriends of mine came over and packed another friend changed my ticket so I could come home business class and lie down. And the other two friends packed up and cleaned the refrigerator, and so there's that kind of camaraderie, that
Yeah.
closeness that just happens when you're there. The other thing that I found that happened, of course, the dancing there is so remarkable, and it was better then. I don't know if you've ever met Margareta from Sweden, but I've known her for many years. She goes down still, and she said, Flo, we were really there for the golden years, as far as it was just, I think, when tourism was just growing back, evolving, because it had really sloughed off for years, and people were just starting to go. Well, tango was just, there was a real growth spurt at that point, and so it was kind of like there were just a certain number of milongas in Buenos Aires, and you knew where the people with whom you were likely to dance would be. It was kind of a circuit. And so Monday you'd go to EDL, and Tuesday you'd go someplace else, and Wednesday you knew to go to Conning, and like that kind of a thing. So there again, you saw the same people. You dance with locals, and you dance with the Europeans also, sometimes Asians. So it was a real family kind of scene, and all the while you were becoming closer to your American friends also. And I, thinking about it the last couple of days, I realized how much that changed me, how much I learned about the porteños, about how emotional they are, how affectionate they are. You're introduced to somebody, and they kiss you. Men greet each other with kisses on the cheek. You see teenage boys on the street greet each other with a kiss on the cheek. Sometimes the waiters kiss you if you haven't been there for a long time, and of course they remember what you like to eat and how you like your steak rare and cooked, and that kind of thing. So I learned a lot about the people and the life there. If you invite someone to dinner at 8 o'clock, they won't show up until 9, maybe 9:30 or 10. So you sort of learn to deal with that. And that's okay. That suits me fine. People eat dinner at 10 and 11 o'clock. I never could figure when the kids slept, because lots of times there would be whole families eating dinner at 10 or 11, or you go in to eat dinner at 6, and there'd be nobody there. So maybe it wouldn't be open yet. So I learned so many things about the porteños. And the other thing that I realized is establishing a deeper contact with people from the US. When I got back, my life started to expand again, because people that I had gotten close to in Buenos Aires, there were some festivals going on in LA. I mean, in the United States, I'd never been to a festival. And a woman whom I met in Buenos Aires, she was staying at a house, Maria Teresa's house in Buenos Aires, And I had gone over to see Maria Teresa when I first arrived, just to have coffee with her. And this woman arrived, and Maria Teresa had to leave. And so she asked me if I would take Vera to a milonga with me. It was her first time there. And so Vera and I became very close. She's from Boulder. And there was a festival in Colorado. And she said, well, why don't you come to the festival in Colorado? And I thought, well, why not? If I can go to Buenos Aires, I can certainly go to Colorado. And so I started going to festivals in the United States and meeting more people from the United States, and there again becoming closer to my friends from Colorado. I met another woman in a festival in Las Vegas, and she said, someday I want to go to Buenos Aires with you. And I said, well, I hope so. And one time there she was in Buenos Aires, and we're still friends yet. So that opened up another part of my tango world, or my tango journey also. So it's just, things just kind of evolve. You know, the more you do, it seems like the more that you do. And some of the dances that I had in Buenos Aires, you just don't know what's behind that door. You want to be open to things, to maybe experimenting. I've had dances with men that just were unbelievable. You know, men I'd never seen before, men with whom I could not converse except physically, because I didn't speak their language. They didn't speak Spanish, and they didn't speak English, and so that's one of the great beauties of tango, is the ability to communicate with someone whom you've never seen before. Maybe you'll never see again, but there is that communication. Yeah, it's wonderful.
I guess also, particular if you're a woman learning, because if you go to Buenos Aires, if you just stay in one place your whole life, like where you're from, then you're just gonna meet a limited amount of people. But you went to Buenos Aires, and there's two things there. Like there's this inflow of different people from around the world, and there were also these great Argentine dancers like the viejos milongueros
Yes.
that you could dance with. So you got all this input from leaders as a dancer, to become a better dancer yourself by dancing with
Yes.
them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a lot of my learning, was dancing with milongueros. Europeans too, of course, but the whole feel of the tango in Buenos Aires is different.
So what made it different for, well, you said you ultimately you went to Buenos Aires on your own, and then you could just dance with whoever you wanted because they didn't see you as a couple together with your husband, so they would
Yeah.
invite you. So can you tell me, back at that point, what was the difference for you between how men danced in Orange Country, a country where you're from, or and Buenos Aires? So what did you experience there?
Oh, well, there were more options. I mean, there were more people, of course, because at that point, at that point here, the milongas were still few.
Maybe I should say, like, also Los Angeles. So just your American tango that you knew, and then going to Buenos Aires. What was the difference that you found in these Argentine dancers that were so good?
The embrace. The embrace is is very different. It's hard to explain the musicality. You know, some of these guys have been dancing for years. I mean, like 60 years, 50 years. Perhaps just feeling more secure, more secure in the embrace. Maybe a greater opportunity to give yourself. Maybe that was the expectation that the men had, because the women dancers in Buenos Aires are different too. They're not there to do tricks and athletic movements. They're there for the embrace, for that contact, that heavenly contact. And so you felt that. The other thing is that I remember the first time I realized this, I was at Confiteria Ideal, which is no longer a dance place. And I was getting ready to leave. I had a great afternoon. And as I stood up to go, I looked at the floor. And it was like this big amoeba, almost moving around. Everybody was dancing together. You looked at the individual couples, and maybe they were interpreting the music differently. Each men's style would perhaps be different, but they were all dancing together. They were all dancing together around the room. Nobody was running into each other. It was just this lovely musical movement of the whole room somehow being in sync. And you didn't get that. You didn't get that here. You didn't get that here. So that was huge. That was huge. There were a lot of things that initially we were not taught. Floorcraft. There wasn't very much talk about floorcraft. And the rules, you know, you wait for the man to step onto the floor. The man waits for the man behind him to give him the okay to come in and onto the floor. We didn't know about that. I didn't know about that. So yeah, a lot of differences. A lot of differences.
Did you see sorry, go ahead. Did you see the foreign people, the foreign men integrate into that while they were dancing in Buenos Aires?
Yeah. Well, you almost have to. A really good friend of mine, who's no longer with us, said one time that the Argentine men were pretty ferocious. If you weren't going fast enough or too fast, where you want to run into somebody in the line of dance, boy, they'd bump you. They would let you know big time. So if you're going to dance in Buenos Aires, you learn the rules. You have to. And Howard also said sometimes you have to be pretty firm yourself, because of course the European men, the foreigners, who come in are competition for the local dancers, and they don't like to be outshone, if there is such a word. They're yeah. So there's quite, I mean, there's things that women go through, but there are also things that men go through in Buenos Aires. So they have to, and normally, or at least a lot of the people who I found, at least the men with whom I danced from other countries, they were, for the most part, good dancers. I think you had to kind of get to a level to feel confident enough to go to Buenos Aires, to be a part of that scene. Yeah.
Yes.
Good dance.
Especially because there weren't like so many marathons and encuentros back then as there are now. So
yeah. Oh yeah. There were, at that point in time, to my knowledge, there were not any encuentros. Now, I don't know about in Europe, but
depends on what year you're talking about.
yeah, what year am I talking about? I went for
There's
so many.
several years, yeah.
Yeah.
But but that's definitely one thing that has changed. That there's much more. There are many more things going on right now, and I feel like there's less need maybe for some people to go to Buenos Aires.
I think,
Yeah, and it just depends on, do you really enjoy Buenos Aires or not? And I do. I enjoy it in a very broad sense. But back then
yeah.
it was probably more the real mecca of tango. And yeah, I guess with all these, for example, with all these milongueros that were still alive, it was also that the level was higher socially, like as in social dancing. That's also
Mhm.
what you're talking about, right? Like these are these people who, maybe they were jealous, or maybe they did it for good purposes, but somehow they policed the floor, so that like the possible man who would end up wreaking havoc on the floor would be yeah, kind of scared away. I've heard about that phenomenon before. Yeah, that's really funny. So you went there and you found that their dancing was different. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. And the whole scene, cabaseo wasn't being done here at that point, and in some places it still isn't. Um, the men will not dance with you until they've seen you dance. They don't want to dance with someone who can't dance because it makes them look bad. And the women are the same.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a whole learning process being there. It was in so many ways. Yeah. Loved it. Loved it. But that changed too, at least for me. Um, and as you say, there's so much more going on here. A lot of people, I think, who would normally go to Buenos Aires are going to Europe now for encuentros and that kind of thing, festivals. Yeah. And there are a lot of encuentros being done in the US also
Yes.
now. And there weren't until, I don't know when they started, really, or how, what the thought was. I think probably that was maybe something that the thought came from Buenos Aires, that because the encuentros are by invitation, they're supposed to be gender balanced. They're normally held as things are done traditionally in Buenos Aires, with the men on one side of the room and the women on the other side of the room, and you cabaseo and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I feel like it just kind of satisfies the demand for a certain level of social dancing that is can be hard to find locally even nowadays, or maybe even
That's
more
right.
nowadays in some places. But it just depends on how the scene looks like. But you are currently, I believe, you are traveling to Encuentros mostly to dance.
Um, yeah, I've been to one recently, and I'm scheduled to go to two more. Um I had several strokes, and so I was kind of down and out for a few years. And then, of course, with the COVID thing, there was no place to go anyway, and nobody was going anyplace. And so I was left, I would say, kind of debilitated for a while from the last stroke, and I honestly didn't know if I would ever be able to dance again, and which was a horrible thought. Um, and then it just kind of happened that a friend of mine, we were together at a actually a wine tasting, and she said that, you want to go to a milonga, and so I went, and I found out that I can dance a bit. um I'm not nearly what I was. My balance is lousy, and I have a left foot that lags, doesn't always want to do what I want it to do. But people are kind, and the experienced dancer and the generous dancer will sense what I can do and what I can't do, and so I'm dancing, and it's wonderful. It's wonderful. So there was a local encuentro, and I decided to go to that um, as a test, because I didn't have to fly.
Yes.
My grandson drove me there. It was quite close, and I was with a roommate, and I knew that she would take good care of me, and it was just a good way to test the waters to see if I was able to. It takes a lot of energy at these encuentros, and you're dancing a lot, and you're on your feet a lot, and I just didn't know if I could handle it or not. And I thought, well, this would be a good place to start. And it was fine. It was okay. I can't dance every dance. Um, and that's okay. That's okay. I sometimes have to rest, and there's certain things that I can't do. But as I say, people are kind, and just being there, just being with people whom I've not seen for years, was just fabulous. And I know that there will be other people whom I've not seen at these next two encuentros I'm going to. So, and then I'm going locally. I try to go once a week at least. So
Okay, that's nice.
yeah, yeah.
Yes. And do you feel when you're at these encuentros, do you also meet people who you still know from these Buenos Aires times when you met so many people from, for example, all over North America and beyond?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then other people who I've met just here from the encuentros. People from the East Coast.
Hmm.
I went to, there's several that are being done now on the East Coast. I've only been to one in Newport News years ago, but that drew people from the Carolinas and from Washington, D.C. and Boston and the whole East Coast. Yeah, so I know a lot of people now but people are traveling more, which is wonderful.
Yes.
People have retired, and they're traveling more.
Yes. So is this kind of a continuation of what you were always looking for in Buenos Aires?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I hadn't thought about it that way, but Yes, I think it is to be to be with the people, to feel the warmth, because it is a family.
Yes.
Yeah, tango truly is a family. To we have tango sisters and tango boyfriends. Yeah, yeah, it's fabulous, and so I find that camaraderie, that closeness more in the Encuentros.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I guess there's also people who have a similar taste in tango. Like there may be
Mhm.
less about acrobatics and showing off and more about social connection and embrace and
Yes.
you know
Yeah, the
the
Encuentros here are milonguero style. They're close embrace.
yes.
Mhm.
And so what I think you told me the before we spoke before this interview,
Mhm.
you told me that you went to Buenos Aires at some point again, but that it wasn't the way it you were used to or something like that.
No, yeah, yeah. I uh, I went in 2017. No, maybe it was 2015, and I had a stroke that year, and I think I was not quite strong enough to go. So that was not my best trip. But then I went again in 2019, and I didn't have a good time. It was, I mean, it was wonderful to be around um, people that there are people down there that I know, not just from dancing, or our relationships are more than just dancing, and it was wonderful to see them. But as far as the dancing went, I didn't dance that much. I found, and that was very disappointing, that there were men with whom I danced for 20 years were not dancing with me. They were busy dancing with the new influx of young women coming from Europe and Asia, and I just didn't dance that much, and that was why I was there. And physically, I was limited also. Um, I, I I I can't walk as far as I used to be able to, and of course, in Buenos Aires, you walk every place,
Yes.
or you take the subway, subte, or a bus. Yeah, so I'll never go back to Buenos Aires. I know that, and that makes me sad. But as Margareta said, we were there at the golden
Yes,
age.
that's what I was thinking of. Yes. So
Yeah,
you were blessed enough to have all these experiences that may not never be repeated the same way they were back then. And that's
yeah,
always what I love about talking with people with a long history in tango is that you just notice that all these different eras have their own kind of their own strengths and weaknesses in a way. For example, you could see it as a weakness that, for example, in 20 years ago, people didn't know as much in outside of Buenos Aires, didn't know as much about the ronda or cabeceo and the music, and some things have definitely improved, but other things don't improve, and some things just, in a sense, they just lag behind in time, and they're never to be repeated again, like this whole culture with the milongueros, for example, and you have been able
yeah,
to dance with so many people who might even not be around anymore, even the Europeans and the Americans, and that's
yeah,
I can only imagine what it feels like for you to have such a rich history in dancing tango and all these memories, and that lives on forever, right? It's just maybe you're not going right now, but this heritage that you have is just seems incredibly exciting, and all the people you've met and all the bonds you have forged. So
and just experiences, leaving a milonga at 2 a.m. and stopping on the corner to have a beer and a slice of pizza. Yeah, just 3 o'clock in the morning. Just unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yes.
Yeah, I think about our mutual friend Chan leaving Milonga and walking arm in arm down Corrientes and talking about who we dance with and then stopping for a beer or for an ice cream or something. Just so many wonderful experiences.
Yes.
Buying shoes. You gotta buy shoes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So you've you also you know Chan Park, so you told me about him, and I've interviewed him myself. So maybe a weird question to ask, but um, so when you met him, did you, because he seemed to have there's a lot of knowledge right now about tango milonguero, so to say, that is very commonplace now, very
Mhm.
widespread. But he already promoted this before it became so well known.
Yeah.
Did you notice in him that he was that he really understood the culture of
Yeah. Yeah.
but so maybe I should ask it more broadly. So did you meet foreigners there where you felt like they really understood the essence of tango, whereas some other people, for example, where you're from, didn't? Like, was there a connection there? Because you're talking about this camaraderie with other people, but I'm sure at
Mhm.
some point you also connect with people who share some similar view of tango and feel it the same way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mentioned to you earlier that about this young man from Australia that it's interesting how you remember. I have what I call bottle dances that they're so wonderful that you want to put them in a bottle and save them, put the cork in and save them, and then take the cork out sometime and be able to do it again. Oh, that would be wonderful. I was at Grisel one night in Buenos Aires, and this young man cabaseoed me, and he came over and got me. We stepped onto the floor, and there was just we didn't start out right away. He just stood there for a moment, not too long because the guy behind him would have bumped him, but he just held me, and I just knew from that initial contact, that embrace, that oh, this is going to be a good one. And it was fabulous, but it was so powerful. This feeling of contact and immersion, just two souls meeting, two hearts meeting, just by his embrace. So it's that kind of thing that keeps you going, really.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was the essence. He certainly had the essence of the milonguero scene. We became friends after that and had lunch, and so yeah, just that kind of thing. Is dancing with Chan. He wrote a book called Tango Zen quite a few years ago, and he talked about tango as being a meditation, and it is when it's good, when you just allow everything else to flow away, and your spirit and your hearts are just with it, with this partner, and with the music, and the world disappears, and you are just absolutely in that moment. There's just nothing like it. And it's sometimes you, at the end of the tanda, it's like you're waking up and you don't have a clue where you are, and you don't care. It was so wonderful. Yeah.
Yes. So do you also experience these things at the Encuentros you go to? Because I suppose there are a lot of people go there with a lot of experience, and then
Yes.
they know what it's really about in a way.
Yeah. And honestly, there are some who shouldn't be there, really. There's a lot of competition for the Encuentros, and there are more Encuentros now. They're getting bigger, and that's a shame, because I think you start to lose the essence of it a little bit. But there are partners with whom I have that same feeling, that this Encuentro that I went to recently, there were several dances I had that I felt as though I was dancing the way I was before. And what a gift that is.
Yes.
And because I know it's changed, and if you are limited physically, my balance is lousy. It's really hard to relax and just let it happen. It's hard to explain, but I don't want to disappoint my partners. And you dance with people over the years, and there's certain expectations that you have, or maybe not expectations, but certainties. You know that this will be a good dance, and I'm not dancing the way that I was, and I don't want to disappoint my partners. And so there's this tension that will happen. Am I going to be able to cross my left foot over my right, or will it dangle someplace, or trip me, or trip him?
Yeah.
So there's that going on. But I had some dances that I felt like I was dancing. I was able to relax enough that I felt that I was dancing the way it was before. This one dear friend of mine said to me once, he said, "Flo, sometimes I feel as though we're sharing the same skin." And that was one of the nicest things. I'm talking about you, Paul. That was one of the nicest things that had ever been said to me. And that expresses it so well when you have that connection. And it's still there. I found that it was still there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
you really sound like you have something very special as a dancer, that even though you may be more physically limited than you were, you still get to transmit what it's really about. And that also shows why tango is can be such a like inner experience, that
oh
even though
yeah.
you might encounter difficulties with movement, you can still, if you feel safe and guarded in someone's arms, you can still have the same depth of what you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful.
I'm
Because I
very
didn't, yeah.
I'm very happy for you that you still get to experience these things, and it's also not just luck, it's also like, it sounds like you really want to dance, and that even though your health may disappoint at times, you're still really pushing forward in a way, and being strong, and getting going for what you want, because
Yeah,
some people, when they get strokes, they might retire from something like this, but it seems like you are very that you love this very deeply, and you have so for many years, and you keep seeking that, and yeah, it's great to be able to talk with someone who has so much dedication in this, and yes, so it may seem like a change of topic, but I would really like to know, because you have a painting and you have a bottle that are quite special, and you put them here for the interview. That's what you told me before I started recording. So can you tell the audience what what these are all about?
okay. Well, the painting is of me and a very, very dear friend of mine, Howard Barsky, who is no longer with us. He was one of the ones who took care of me when I broke my ankle. He worked in San Gabriel, which is primarily a sort of a Latin quarter here in LA, and he and I danced. Well, the first time I met Howard was at that Friday night milonga that I told you about, Mark Celias, and he had just started dancing, and this dear friend of mine said, "Dance with him, Flo. He's going to be really good." And I danced with him, and I said afterwards, "Howard, I'm sure we danced together in another life." And he said later of me that that was the first time he really understood what tango was all about,
Wow.
which was a wonderful thing to say. So we danced together, through the years. He became a very, very dear friend of mine. And at some point, there was a little local competition going. It was done by Julian Angel of the Tango Room, and it was just for local people. And Howard asked me if I would be in the competition with him, be his partner, and I said I would love to. Now, understand, at that point in time, I was bald because I had breast cancer and chemo, and had shaven my head because couldn't stand the hair falling out. And so we danced, and we came in third. And the picture was taken of Howard and me dancing by a girlfriend of mine who is a wonderful artist, Elaine Hughes. She takes photographs and then she paints from the photographs. And so she took this picture of Howard and me dancing that night, but she added hair. She said, "Do you want to be bald?" And I said, "No, I prefer a little hair." So anyway, she painted this for me, or not for me, but just because. And then she gave me a copy of it, which hangs in my entryway, and one is one of my prized possessions. Well, fast forward a few years. This was, I guess last year. A man in the tango world, kind of a newbie, owns a part partnership in a winery, and he has two passions in life: wine and tango. This is Glenn. And so he decided that he would like to combine them. Very often at milongas, the organizers will put out a bottle of wine or whatever for people. And he said he had tasted some pretty bad wine at some of these milongas, so he thought he would up things a little bit. And so he started introducing, having wines made. It's called Tango Vino. Okay, can you see?
A bit, yeah, put it a bit, lift it a bit. Yes, now it's visible. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what he decided he wanted to do was to put images of tango dancers on this bottle. It's called Tango Vino, and it's inspired by, I think that's what it says, inspired by the passion of tango. So this was his third release. It's a Pinot Blanc, and he decided to put an image of the painting on this bottle.
Yes.
And
yes.
so there we are. That's Howard and Flo. So that was fun. He did that. Actually, he released it one afternoon. I think that was in August, maybe September. And that was the day that I started back to tango last year, because the girlfriend, Elaine, the artist, had taken me to this release of the wine. And she said there was a milonga opening up that day, that Sunday afternoon. She said, "Do you want to go to a milonga?" And I said, "Yeah." And there were friends there I had known for years. And Glenn has a little, it was at his home, has a little room, dance room. And so we danced a little bit. I just happened to have my shoes with me. And so I thought, well, okay, that went all right. So we went to a milonga, and that started me back up again. So this is all gone. Everybody, it was sold out. Glenn ordered 10 cases, and they were gone in a flash. So anyway,
But for you, it's like a special memory as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Not just because being on the bottle, but also the commemoration, like the coming back to the milongas. That
Oh,
was
absolutely. And Howard, he was just he was just a wonderful man. Wonderful man. Miss him.
yes.
Yeah.
But it's also lovely how you get to remember these people with things like this, with the art, with yeah, it can even be with simple pictures, but in your case it's like a piece of art that reminds you
Yeah.
of someone who was very dear to you. And
Yes.
I guess we all know these cases of people in tango very dear to us and have disappeared. Obviously, I don't have the same trajectory as you have, but I have definitely experienced people passing away, and you just miss them. And if in the case if it's women, I cannot dance with them anymore, and
Yeah.
it's a sad feeling, but still, you get to value all the shared
Yeah.
joys, the memories, because that, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Yesterday, speaking of that whole thing, I went to a celebration of life for a friend of mine, and that brought up all kinds of memories. This was a man that I met, probably 25 years ago, and discovered not too long after we met, we and our mutual partners were in a tango class together. And I discovered early on that we shared the same birthday. So that I always felt like Nestor was sort of my birthday brother, not the same year, but so we had a special bond. And yesterday it was sad, but it was also happy. People talked about him and how fun he was. They had a video done of just different photos that had been taken through his life, and he had this wonderful smile that just it said, oh, he was so Argentine. He was so Argentine. Every photo he had his arm around somebody, and he was a really touchy-feely, flirtatious guy, and his smile just said, welcome world. I'm here. It was, I didn't cry yesterday. It was really a wonderful celebration of his life. Yeah. But so there you are.
Yes.
It is hard to lose people.
Sorry, it's hard to lose people?
It is hard to lose people
Yes.
in your world.
Yes, 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 yes. But like I said, at least we get to cherish all the memories, and that's also the beauty of life, right? That even though life is so vulnerable, so it can be so limited. At the same time, if you live a certain way, like we live in tango, and we meet all these people, and we create these bonds with them. It's so beautiful how we can. It's like sometimes it's like a consolation to know these people and to have experienced certain things, even with those who aren't there anymore. But yeah. And
absolutely, yeah.
Talking to someone like you, I just realize even more how beautiful these connections are that we find in tango. That is, it's not just about the dance; it's about so much more, and you can then express that also in the dance when you know each other better, and then when you dance, it's just so much more profound. And yes, so it was great to able to talk to you today. And yeah, thanks for all the lovely memories. And yes, it's too bad we live so far away apart, but yes.
Yes. I was just thinking, I hope someday we'll be able to share a dance. That would be so lovely.
Yes. You seem to be a very special dancer, and I was very happy to talk with you for this interview, and I've definitely accomplished some of the things I wanted from talking to you. And it's because I've done I think this is the 48th interview or the 49th, so I've done quite a lot of interviews, and right now I'm really looking for certain accents that I haven't covered yet in the past in the interview so far. And with you, I just knew beforehand that it would be something unique, and yeah, that's what we have accomplished today. So I'm very grateful with that. It's very inspiring to me as well. So
oh, well, thank you so much, Lucas. It was a great pleasure. It's been a wonderful experience for me, not just this interview, but just going back in my head and my psyche into all these things that I've experienced over the years, and the connections that I've made, that so many people, even if I never see them again, they'll be with me. They will stay with me. I know that. Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you for today, and hope to meet you at some point.
Oh, I hope so. Thank you. It was wonderful. It was wonderful.
And have fun at the Encuentros soon that you're going to.
I will. I will.
Bye bye.
Bye.